After the Civil War, Americans lived with a lot of unfinished pain. Injuries lingered, work stayed exhausting. Stress and grief felt constant, and the drugs people used to cope, especially opium-based remedies, often pulled them into dependence. In that gap, a new business exploded: patent medicines and nerve tonics. They promised relief for almost anything, in bottles that sounded modern and scientific. These products rarely needed proof. They needed belief, bold labels, and a problem to target. Headaches, fatigue, low mood, shaky nerves. Everyday suffering became a market. Pharmacists mixed syrups and stimulants and sold them as medical help, not treats. People kept buying because something, anything that made them feel better for a few hours seemed worth it. This was medicine as commerce, and commerce moved fast. In Atlanta, a trained pharmacist named John Pemberton worked inside that booming system. He understood ingredients, dosing, and what customers asked for at the counter. He also knew the limits of the era's cures because he depended on them too. So he started chasing a different kind of product, one that could be sold as a credible remedy, one that promised energy and relief, and one he could market widely. Pemberton moved from experimenting in theory to selling something real. He developed a coca and wine tonic and put it on the market as a remedy, not a treat. Coca leaf sat at the center of the promise, paired with other stimulants that fit the era's taste for scientific cures. The pitch stayed simple and bold. This was help for worn-out nerves, low energy, and modern life's constant strain. He did not present the drink as a casual beverage you sipped for fun. He sold it like a pharmacist sold medicine, measured, purposeful, and linked to specific complaints people already feared. Coca carried a reputation as a powerful, up-to-date ingredient, and the wine made the tonic feel both potent and immediate. In a crowded market of cures, he aimed for credibility by framing stimulation as therapy. That positioning shaped everything about how the product was understood. Buyers did not just want flavor, they wanted relief, and they wanted it quickly. So the tonic leaned into the language of health and restoration, suggesting that chemistry and plants could fix what rest could not. Pemberton's coca and wine formula became a product that lived in the space between medicine and marketing, and it sold on the idea that it belonged there. The world around Pemberton shifted faster than his medicine business did. Temperance groups gained influence and local leaders tightened rules around alcohol. Drinks that once sounded respectable as tonics started sounding like excuses to sell liquor. That change hit hard because many popular remedies depended on wine or spirits to carry the ingredients. Overnight, an alcohol-based cure looked less like science and more like a problem. The pressure was practical, not just moral. If alcohol sales faced new restrictions, an alcohol-heavy formula risked becoming harder to stock, harder to advertise, and easier to target. What had been a selling point could turn into a liability. So Pemberton faced a choice: fight the trend and lose access to customers, or adapt and keep his product alive. The market rewarded the version that could stay legal and acceptable. He adapted. Pemberton moved toward an alcohol-free approach, keeping the idea of a modern stimulant tonic while removing the part most likely to draw criticism or regulation. That meant rebuilding the formula so it still felt effective without the wine base people expected from these medicines. It was a pivot meant for survival. The drink had to fit a changing climate, or it would disappear with the old rules. In 1886, the new alcohol-free syrup finally met the public. It got poured and mixed with carbonated water at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, right at the soda fountain where people already went for relief as much as refreshment. This time, it carried a name built to sound familiar and modern: Coca-Cola. The first servings did not aim to be a casual treat. They aimed to be taken seriously. It got presented as a medicinal brain and nerve tonic the kind of product people trusted a pharmacist to provide. The pitch leaned on ingredients that sounded like science. From coca leaves came cocaine, described then as a useful stimulant. From kola nut came caffeine, another energizer. Together, they got framed as a smart combination for the mind and the nerves. It promised help, not just a pleasant taste. That framing mattered because it told customers how to understand what they felt after a glass. A lift in mood or focus looked like proof the tonic worked. A jolt of energy sounded like medicine doing its job. The soda fountain became the delivery system, and the pharmacy setting gave the claims extra weight. Coca-Cola entered the world as a drug-laced remedy with a brand new name. Once Coca-Cola sat at the soda fountain, the next battle happened on paper. Small ads and printed notices promised relief people already craved. Headaches that lingered, exhaustion that stole a workday, and a vague, common complaint called nervousness. Testimonials followed, presented as proof that the drink did more than taste good. Each claim turned a new sip into a possible solution, and that language moved product. Sales rose because the pitch matched the moment. When someone felt worn down, this syrup offered a fast, affordable fix right at a pharmacy counter. The drink gained a clear identity, not a treat, not a luxury, but a remedy dispensed in a familiar medical setting. That context mattered. A soda fountain inside a pharmacy carried authority, and the advertising leaned hard on it. The message stayed simple. This helped. But another reality took shape at the same time. People did not always come to be treated. They came to feel better quickly. The stimulation became the real selling point, even when the wording stayed medical. A headache cure also worked as a boost. A nerve tonic also felt like a lift. So Coca-Cola straddled two uses at once, officially a pharmacy remedy, increasingly a pick-me-up people chose because it made them feel awake. After Pemberton's death, Coca-Cola did not automatically become a success story. It became a business fight. Asa Candler, an Atlanta druggist with sharp instincts, gradually gathered the rights and took control of the formula. He treated the drink less like a curious pharmacy item and more like a product that needed discipline. Ownership got simplified, production got tightened, and once Candler held the reins, he pushed one goal above all: growth. Candler built that growth through marketing that stayed simple and relentless. He put the name everywhere people could see it and repeated it until it stuck. The point was not just to sell a glass at a soda fountain, but to make Coca-Cola recognizable before anyone even tasted it. At the same time, he organized distribution so the syrup reached more fountains, more towns, more states. A small Atlanta tonic turned into a system that could scale. Under Candler, the meaning of Coca-Cola shifted. It moved away from being a niche remedy you tried when you felt unwell, and toward being something you chose because you knew the brand. Still, the company did not drop the old language overnight. Ads kept leaning on health-adjacent ideas: relief, energy, nerves, fatigue, without always sounding like a hard medical promise. It was a careful bridge, familiar, tonic credibility, now used to sell a mainstream drink. By the 1890s, the world around Coca-Cola changed faster than the syrup did. Cocaine stopped looking like a modern miracle and started looking like a public problem. Newspapers, doctors, and lawmakers raised alarms about misuse and dependence. That attention landed on any product tied to coca. For Coca-Cola, the risk was simple. The same ingredient that once sounded scientific now threatened the brand's future. Pressure turned into action through growing regulation and tighter oversight of what companies sold as health products. The company faced a choice. It could defend its Coca connection and invite scandal, or it could quietly reshape the formula. It started the safer path first, reducing the cocaine content rather than announcing a dramatic break. The drink remained familiar to customers, but its chemistry shifted under the surface. That reduction marked a turning point. Coca-Cola still carried traces of its medicinal past, but it moved away from being an explicitly drug-containing tonic. Each change lowered the legal and reputational risk, and it loosened the drink's connection to pharmacy-style medicine. The company did not abandon Coca overnight. Instead, it began a step-by-step transition, setting up the moment when cocaine disappeared entirely. In the early 1900s, the ground shifted under every product that had once hidden behind bold promises. New food and drug laws tightened, and newspapers and reformers pushed harder on what companies put into the public's body. Coca-Cola sat in that spotlight. The remaining link to cocaine stopped looking like a quirky ingredient and started looking like a liability. So the company moved from trimming the drug to cutting it out entirely. That change did not mean the coca leaf disappeared from the recipe. Instead, the company kept a coca-based flavoring that had been processed to remove the cocaine, often described as decoconized coca. It preserved the taste and the brand's familiar identity, but it severed the most controversial part of the formula. The message was clear, even without being said out loud. This was no longer a drink that depended on a drug to sell. Once cocaine left the picture, the old medical language became harder to justify. The brand's advertising turned away from cures and nerves and leaned into simpler ideas people understood immediately. It sold refreshment. It sold taste. It sold a modern habit that fit into everyday life, not a remedy that belonged behind a pharmacy counter. And that pivot mattered. Coca-Cola stayed popular by changing what it promised, not just what it contained. By the time the mid-1900s arrived, Coca-Cola no longer behaved like a specialty product that needed explaining. It moved because a system carried it. Bottling plants multiplied, then connected into a network that put the same drink in different towns, then different countries. That mattered more than any single recipe detail. Consistency became the selling point. If it tasted the same everywhere, people trusted it everywhere. Then war accelerated what business alone already started. Military supply lines carried familiar brands wherever troops went, and Coca-Cola rode that logistics machine. Bottles followed bases, ports, and transport routes, and local bottling often came next. When soldiers returned home, the habit returned with them. A drink that once depended on a counter and a pitch now depended on distribution. Scale changed the product's meaning. It felt universal. Advertising locked that new meaning in place. Instead of promising relief or benefits, the message sold an everyday moment, a normal, repeatable pleasure that fit modern life. Posters, radio, and later television pushed the same idea over and over until it sounded obvious. The old pharmacy origin did not disappear, but it stopped being useful. It survived as a footnote while the company sold a soft drink, not a cure. In the present day, Coca-Cola operated as a standard soft drink, sweet, fizzy, and caffeinated. It sat inside the normal rules for food and beverages, not the loose world of old cures and tonics. No cocaine remained in it. No label promised relief from headaches or nerves. It got sold as something simple and repeatable, a refreshment people chose for taste and routine. That shift changed what the drink meant. Earlier, it had been framed as a remedy, a product people reached for because they believed it did something to the body beyond pleasure. Now the pitch relied on a different idea: enjoyment. Energy came from caffeine, but without medical language wrapped around it. The company treated it like a consumer good, not a treatment. The contrast stayed hard to miss. A formula that once lived at a pharmacy counter ended up as a worldwide symbol of branding, recognized across borders and generations. Its modern identity leaned on consistency, marketing, and familiarity, not on claims of healing. What counted was the experience of drinking it and the meaning attached to the name. Medicine no longer defined it.